Hello, everybody. It's our second BlackProGen Fall 2015 Hangout. My name is Nika Sewell Smith. I'm here with True Lewis in good old Kentucky, and also Miss Shelley Murphy, who is in VA, Virginia. I'm here in Tennessee, at least temporarily. I'll be in another state tomorrow. But nonetheless, we're going to get started with our topic tonight, which is people of color in genealogy, or issues that people of color deal with in genealogy research. This is going to be a little bit of an interesting conversation because this can go a number of different ways. We definitely need to look at things from the perspective of people being a person of color, considering we're all people of color. We also need to look at the other side too, or things that we may not consider on the onset. And just want to let everybody know, if you have any questions or anything, I've posted the event page. We'll have our chat open for folks who want to participate in that. We can get our little banter over. Everybody can give a little information about themselves before we get started, such as True.
Hello, everyone. It's just me, True, from My True Roots, and I'm a African American researcher, and I blog about my family history, and I've been doing this since '98, and I enjoy it. I'm glad to be here. Especially see you, Shelley, my cousin.
Hi, hi, cousin True. Bet you didn't know that, did you, Nika?
I think all of us are related, honestly. When you start
We
really
are.
doing the
We are.
genealogy research, and then once we all started taking DNA tests, yeah, we're all.
Yep, it's DNA. We'll lock it down soon. But I'm Shelley from Central Virginia, and welcome to everybody. I'm also a professional genealogist and also an instructor, and love educating people on different ways of doing things.
Absolutely. Awesome. I'm Nika Smith, professional genealogist. My website is whoisnikasmith.com. I talk about a number of things. My two interests are genealogy and photography separately, but I also like them together as well. And I blog. I do a lot of different things. My favorite thing to do at this point is to tell stories, share storytelling, essentially. But anywho, we also have another person joining us. Ellen, are you there?
Uh-huh.
I don't hear her.
I see her picture. She just dropped off.
Yeah, she may not have been able to get in, but Ellen Fernandez Sacco is one of my genealogy buddies from California. She actually does a lot of Latin research, in particular research on Puerto Rico, or in Puerto
Oh,
Rico,
I got
and
folks.
other Latin research. So hopefully Ellen's able. Look, I see her moving.
Hi.
Hi, hi, Trish.
Hi,
Hi,
Ellen.
Ellen.
How are you?
I'm giving her a virtual hug.
I know.
So we're just kind of doing introductions. Ellen, feel free to introduce yourself before we get started.
Oh, well, my name's Ellen Fernandez Sacco. I'm a professional genealogist. I live in Oakland, California, and a lot of what I work on is Puerto Rican genealogy.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yes.
I got
Yeah.
people in Puerto Rico.
Oh, good.
Yeah, my niece and
Hmm.
her whole family is Puerto Rican.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, old sugarcane farm, a whole 9 yards. Yep, I've got them on my tree helping them do some research, but I just told her, go to the church.
Uh-huh.
Just get to the church. That's all you got to do, you know. So yeah, it's Lozada and
Uh-huh.
Lozada and oh gosh,
Are
just
they on the east side, or on the east side of the island, or the west?
all I know is it's in the boonies, way back.
Uh-huh.
That's all she says. She lives in Tampa, and she had just came back a couple months ago.
Uh-huh.
And there's also I'm trying to think of their grandmother's maiden name, and because she's down there, it's Hasso is her first name, but it'll come to me in a little bit.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, but Lozada is the one side. So,
Hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, looks like we have a couple of viewers. We got our panel here. We'll probably have some more people joining us as the night rolls on. So, just for us to get started, I have a few questions. Of course, I like to put a few questions out for all of us to answer. So here is question number one, or I should say scenario number one. You're in an elevator, and you're talking to a person you just met, and you're talking genealogy. I'm sure this has happened to all of us, right? We meet someone random, we start having a conversation on an airplane, in the elevator, whatever. In 1 minute, sell this person you just met on why there is a need for person of color genealogy. Why is there still a need for that? Don't jump in all at once.
Wait, well, let me ask you, say that. So, why is there a need?
Why is there a need for minority genealogy research or people of color genealogy research?
Well, I'd have to jump in first, say, because there is people of color. I mean, seriously, there is, what are we, 30% minority of the United States? People of African descent, at least I think it's 30%, 29, 30. And so there's roots here, generations here, just like our European ancestors, be it Europe or wherever. And the need is because it shouldn't be any different than anybody else's. It needs to be done. If that makes sense, right, Drew?
Yes, it does. Yes. I would say it's because it needs to be written down, Our story is part of the American narrative. We don't want it left out. So, go ahead and get your history, your family history started, because there'll be someone else down the line eventually that's not here yet. Those are your unborn readers, and they need their history recorded. And it's going to mean something someday to someone down the line. So
it was a great elevator pitch. What would you say, Ellen? What would, in 1 minute, how would you?
There's no one history. There's no one family, and you never know where that tree is going to lead you. And it's if you want to understand more about yourself and why you're here. I mean, why not get into genealogy? And I think a lot of people are realizing that their identities are, I know also for myself, it's like it's so composed of all these different elements. And there's all these different histories. And just because it's not mainstream, it doesn't mean that it should be any less legitimate or a reason not to pursue it.
And I always say, who better to tell my story than me for my family? So.
Absolutely. One thing that I think you touched on, True, that I think is an important thing to mention is the fact that a lot of minority people or people of color in genealogy have oral histories that may not have actually been written down and captured in a printed form or something that's more organized. One of the things I talk about often, I have a lot of friends that go to family reunions, and the number of them, no one ever talks about genealogy at the family reunion. Now, for us, that seems really strange. Like, all these people, you're related. You may or may not know exactly how, but no one's ever brought up tracing your family lineage to find out exactly how all the pieces fit together. And so I think some of that stems back to the fact that our history is largely oral, in particular people who are of African descent. You have your griot that's in your tribe or your village, and they, they're the person that remembers everything. And we have the, as I call the unofficial family historians. In our families, my mom being one of them, she doesn't consider herself, a historian, but she could call the roll on a million people in the family. So I definitely think, for me personally, I think I agree totally with what everyone said, but I think there is a need for people of color or just minority research, number one, because it's been marginalized. I know we've all had that experience going into a library, for Genealogy Society or Genealogy Library, whatever, and you go to look at the genealogy resources and you notice that there are still censuses that are whites only indexed. Like these books are still on the shelves, and I often tell other societies, like, take that stuff down.
Yeah.
Don't put that up there. You know, but because it alienates, it may
It does
alienate
alienate.
somebody, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So, so that's those are my thoughts on why there's a need. And so moving from this, what do you all feel are incorrect assumptions that are made about minority genealogy research? You know, things out there that you've heard people say, maybe in ignorance or maybe just because they just don't know.
Well, it's sad to say is, and it's not just in genealogy, but a lot of times, even if you have the same training as other people, you're still not viewed as having the skill and the level as either your white counterpart, or European counterpart. And the same thing is real estate agents. They would use the black agents to show them around, but when it came time to write the contract, they would go get the white realtor to do that. And a lot of realtors have faced that in different communities. And when I lived in Tallahassee, Florida, that was an issue. And the black realtors came together and said, look, we have the same training. We can
Mm-hmm.
do the same research. We also have knowledge of things that others don't, like in our direct community. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing like research. And True said it best. Who best to tell that story but me, about me or my family?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us could have the awareness and tap into other cultures, but when it's yours, no one can tell the story like you telling your own story.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
we're just not viewed the same. There might be one or two people that are put above others, but they
Mm-hmm.
still, the larger majority does not see black researchers at the same level. And I'll call out Elizabeth Shown Mills, or and those, and I commend her and I respect her deeply. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of research and a lot of skills that she brings to the genealogy community. But even the little local level or whatever, people are just not looked, African American researchers are just not looked the same. They're just not viewed or valued the same. And I'm going to say valued.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my opinion, what I deal with, what I'm faced with a lot of times. So,
And we've been doing this for a long time.
yeah.
And I just, a lot of times too, I think the larger genealogy community doesn't realize that our stories are intermingled with their history. Their stories cannot be told without ours.
So
I'm really staunch on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so when you're doing your history, persons of colors are a part of that.
hmm
Yeah, and then they think that there's no records to be found. I know a lot of people think that, but there are records out there for us to use, even if we have to go into the other communities' records. That's where you'll find us at. It's hard, but we can break that wall down. I've done it a lot of times, and I've learned from Shelley, Angela, Bernice, and others that you can get through that.
yeah, and again, you look differently. That's all.
Mhm.
You're looking differently. You're taking different angles and
Right.
Mhm.
things. It's there. It's there.
Yes. But
Uh,
Shelley's right. Shelley did point out a lot that we are just looked at differently when we have the magnitude and we're all to do exactly the same thing they're doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sometimes it takes us a little longer, and it's
Mhm.
not just African American, and but
Mhm.
sometimes it takes us a little longer, and we might get smaller bits and pieces, but we actually have to walk that same walk. It's just
Mhm.
with the different set of eyes, you know.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and how can you
Definitely.
do African American research? Because what I teach in the classes is stop looking for the African Americans if you're crossing into the slave era. That
Mhm.
from whatever time period. If you go before 1870, you can't look for black people necessarily. You have to look for the European, then go back and find, you know, and go that route and find the white to find the black. And you might have to flip-flop a few times. And I think the same would be for Native American. You know, if there's been some blending going on, and Angela Walton-Raji calls the blending of the families, the blacks and the Native Americans or African descent people. But we just have a little more curves. I give that talk on Saturday. And one of the things, there will probably be more white people attending than there will be black. For the first point that you brought out. And the second point, for those people that are skilled at researching, they will pick up tips which will enhance their own research besides help them do African American research. So that's typically what happens in my experience from being, you know, teaching. And unfortunately, I would love to have a room of black people there, you know, to be able to give them skills to help them through that research. Because if they don't get education, it's hard. It is just hard, and you feel impossible that they can't find anybody, you know. So.
Yeah, it was a struggle when I first started. Always felt like I was the only one, and I was alone because I could never really at first relate to my counterparts because our research is a little bit different. So, yeah, it's
Ellen, do you find that with the Latino or Latin way as well? Do you search just a little bit differently? I mean, I know a lot, you know.
A lot of it's contingent on class also, and extant records, you know, what survives. So for some people, it seems the poorer the families are, the harder it is to find the information.
That's true.
And then trying to develop those strategies, which I'm sure all of you have had that, trying to track people down through records, and then you find either half the pages are missing, or they're not preserved, and preservation is an issue in Puerto Rico, but it's slowly changing with digitalization and stuff.
Is it really?
Yeah, but it's similar, and then it's very different. I mean, you have the civil registrations that you can work with, but then there are entire sets of records you don't have ready access to because the legal system is set up a little differently. So, you know, like if you have notary records, you have to go and copy them out one by hand. And there's a certain irony in knowing that in England they released over 1 million records last year and said to everybody online and said, have at it. And then here we are in Puerto Rico trying to figure out, is that in that book? And then if somebody can get that, and then finding out that if somebody actually publishes it, they're considered live documents. All right. And so that then people have potential legal issues that they can become involved in just by issuing transcriptions, which is kind of crazy because it's, you know, we're already talking 100, 150 years out. I mean, I can understand the history is there, but to consider it a live document when you know for a fact either the land's already extinguished or whatever, it just puts a real roadblock in terms of trying to get to lists that contains names of some people that we're really looking to find, or bits of those connections. Because once somebody has property and that those names get recorded and that is tried to be either sold or transferred to someone else, then you have something more to go on. But that isn't always evident from parish records or from you know, the civil registrations.
But typically for and I'm going to say Puerto Rico, they have similar records, but they could be named differently or in different locations, or vice versa, or a little bit of all.
It's a little bit of all. It's a little bit of all. And then knowing the history of the areas helps because, you know, the island gets subdivided, and then it's at a certain level. You'll have certain number of records, and then it gets subdivided as becomes municipalities, and then learning something about the local histories of each municipality is really helpful. Because then you can learn something like I found out that in one town, a mayor, as soon as he would take office, his first thing was to throw out the papers of the guy who was there
The
before.
guy before.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
things like that happen, and then to know when epidemics happen and when
Sure.
there's going to be these massive interruptions in record keeping or record destruction is also helpful too. And
Which that's key in African American research.
Definitely.
Well, in European also, you have to know that history, the community history.
I
Right.
tell
Used to
you. Yeah.
teach people, you know, oh, just go look 5 pages before your page on the census where you see your ancestor, or 10 pages back. No, you search the whole community. It's
Right.
key to understand where everybody is at, because relatives aren't too far from each other, but they
That's right.
might be in the same county but not on the same block. So
what do you all think is a barrier? You know, I mean, I know me and Miss Shelley, we speak at different conferences. I know Ellen teaches different things. You know, what's the major roadblock and why people feel like they aren't empowered to get the skills to be able to research African American or minority groups? You know, for me, like take for instance, I had a friend. Her last name is Penza, right? And you know, so she reached out to me. Oh yeah, you know, we're oh gosh, I can't remember where she said that her grandfather said that he was from, right? But it was not Puerto Rico. I'll just put it that way. So she's like, well, I'm really interested in his family. So I found, you know, where he became part of the U.S. military. That's how he got to the United States. I get all the way back to her great-great-grandmother, and she is in Puerto Rico. And I had to tell her, you're not what you all thought you were. You're Puerto Rican. And she's like, my entire family. We were this and we're not. We're Puerto Rican. She's like, you don't even understand. This is like decades of research that, you know, or just the stories that we've been passing on that nobody knew. And I said, well, I'm from California. I took 4 years of Spanish. I have a functional, you know, knowledge of Spanish, so I was able to go through and read the census forms. And you know, because I already knew them in the United States, I pretty much knew where the columns fell. So you know, it was a little bit of a learning curve. But all I had to do was go online, research some things, figure out some things. So I didn't feel that there was a roadblock for me to be able to go and find that. Same thing for if someone was Asian or if someone was Polish. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I just find out where I need to understand where things are happening, and I move forward. But not everybody feels empowered. It's almost like there's this wall. Why do you all think that there is a wall where people who just are genealogy crazy or they love family history research like we do, where they feel like they are not empowered to do research on families of color?
I think there's some fear there, though. I think there's a little bit of fear. And number one, fear we're not doing it right. Fear it's going to cost too much. Fear we're going to find out something we either don't need to know, you know, or some level, and just a little bit of intimidation, I think, comes. And Ellen, look in the chat box. I put those names in there and that town in there too. So anyway, hi Angela.
Hi, we have someone who joined us, Miss Angela Walton Raji.
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
She had to make a grand entrance, right?
Reasonably late.
That's okay. So what we're currently discussing is why people, okay, I'm stopped for a second. Okay, there we go. Why people who just do genealogy in general, why they a lot of times don't feel empowered to do research on people of color. What is the brick wall? You know, I gave an example as to it doesn't matter to me who the person is I'm helping do research. I don't care what their ethnicity is. I'm going to try to help them. But a lot of times I find that when someone who may not be doing people of color research gets presented with the opportunity to do it, they feel intimidated. They feel as though they don't have the right skills, you know, all that. And what are the reasons, you know, the question I was posing was, what are the reasons you feel like that is the case? Why do people feel like there's a wall? And Miss Shelley was answering that, you know, there's fear. She thought fear was a part of the equation.
Well, I think another thing, I'll just play on that a little bit in terms of fear. There's also fear of having to interact with people with whom you're not comfortable. There is still a disconnect. Socially, there is a disconnect that people have. Oh my gosh, I have to talk to these people, whatever that may mean. And are they going to be mad at me because I'm not one of them? Are they going to be mad because my ancestors owned slaves? Or do they think that I'm withholding something? Or are they uncomfortable with people of color? And many people are. They may smile and say hello, but oops, I'm gone, goodbye. You know, it can be a little bit of discomfort. And also there's fear because, oh my gosh, are they angry? Are they going to start talking reparations? You know, what's next?
Right.
And because there is no sort of safe meeting ground or safe space where people can get together and talk. And I'm not saying, you know, okay, let's have a come to Jesus meeting and all is forgiven. But hey, you know, a lot of people do believe that there is a wide canyon you have to leap over to get there. And it's because, yeah, that fear factor, but fear of many things. And fear of the people, the live people, or the descendants of the people of color you may be researching. So, yeah, I would agree.
Something I'm going to jump in and just say, because this just dropped into my head as you were talking. You know, if you have an ancestor that you have, you know, heard about over the years, you know, you've spent a lot of your time researching them, going to archives, researching online, maintaining this tree. You know, your family comes together, and there's this ancestor that you know, you've heard about. They talk about the person like they're still alive, you know, with their attributes and how great of a person they were and all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, he is the next thing, you know, to Jesus. You know, Jesus' statue is here, and then your ancestor's right here, right? And then you have this person who you don't think has anything in common with you, who does not clearly possibly look like you, who comes out and is basically a living manifestation of a lie.
Go ahead with
you know
that.
what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Take for instance me, right? I clearly checked the box that says I'm African American, but you know, based on autosomal testing, roughly 30% of my DNA is European. Yeah. So that's the equivalent to one of my grandparents being European, right?
More than one.
More than one.
It'd be more than one. So here I show up, my cute face, and your DNA results. Right. And you're trying to reconcile in your mind, wait a minute, how in the world do I have cousins or family members who are traceable that are descendants from my ancestors?
Well, there's the UWA.
And like I said, and I'm the living manifestation of a quote unquote lie. Right. Because think about it, a lie had to have been told or not, or was a story withheld in order for you to believe that your ancestor didn't have relations with somebody who was, you know, who was a slave, possibly.
Well, there's the UWA that all of us have, and the UWA, the unknown white ancestor, and I am 20% Euro according to 23andMe autosomal testing. But yes, I may show up as my little chocolate face, and again, also I think the world, the human animals, so to speak, is I guess sort of trained to judge people by the way they look at who they are, and they have certain reactions to that. People have certain reaction to my complexion. People will have a certain reaction to another person's complexion, and unless they show other attributes to prove that they are other than what is visible, then okay. But then there is the UWA, that unknown white ancestor. Now, I've gone back pretty far back in my own research, and at the same time, I can identify actually one of my 64 great grandparents, just one. I can identify 4 great grandparents, but there are 16 of them. And all that one and those 4, they're all people who would be called people of color. But out of those other 32 or 16, depending upon the generation, you know there are some Caucasian people there. And one of the reasons I don't necessarily connect with other DNA people, like some people have wonderful success. Well, my folks were south, Virginia to Tennessee to Mississippi to back to Tennessee and then to Arkansas. Almost every generation moved somewhere else.
Right.
So my folks didn't stay in the same community where they married and intermarried different families and communities. And I have the paper trail to show that, to illustrate that. So now, let's say you and I may be cousins. We don't know how because we were matches on DNA, on GEDmatch, but we may have the same unknown white ancestor. On the other hand, I have a lot of white matches who rarely respond to my offer to share genomes, but they're probably saying, oh, that's impossible. They don't they don't even know that their ancestor may have slipped into the quarters. And which one was it? Was it great-great-grandpa, or great-great-grandpa's son, or great-great-grandpa's brother, or great-great-grandpa's male first cousin? So now, let's say you and I may be cousins. We don't know how because we were matches on DNA, on GEDmatch, but we may have the same unknown white ancestor. Right. On the other hand, I have a lot of white matches.
Okay, somebody's got some reverb.
That's Angela's re-talking.
And someone's got a, I was going to say, that was a great recap. I was going to say I was going to say she's great. She can repeat herself that well.
Yeah, she's doing good, Angela. You're repeating word for word what you said. But I want to follow up on that, which is...
Have I stopped echoing?
No, it started over. What was recorded what you said, and then it came right back in at the beginning, so, or something.
Click 2 times before I ever get in.
Yeah, it was interesting when you're talking about the DNA, and of course, it's not the fad, but it's definitely the most exciting thing that's kind of happening right now.
Great.
Because people are connecting, but I just hope it's not a total false sense of how you're connecting and who you're connecting.
In a shortcut to the real reason.
Exactly, because what you talk about, what did you say, Nika? You were 30%? I'm 57%. I didn't expect it to be that high. I got relatives telling me that, not relatives, but good friends, and I think y'all know her, Leontanine Peck. She said, girl, you got to give up your sister card. Because we were raised African American, and then I come back with 57% European, Mama 70% European, but we expected that. Her father is white, and there's other, and it's a mix, and everybody in everybody else's bed, and then they all related anyway on the European side. So, it was just not expected to be that much, but that was an adjustment for me. I think I called you, Angela, and was talking to you because I said, I've always been raised culturally in a mixed environment, but we always identified as African American. I still identify as African American, and because culturally, that's what I know. And again, it was like, well, and I've always checked all the boxes too, on the federal, disclosure of your race and whatever. But I just check them all, or I just put human, and because again, my family is so jumbled around. But it's interesting what DNA has changed amongst this research that we've been doing at least the last 25, 30 years. I've been involved with it. And people 20 years ago, there's no thought of the DNA. You were just following the sperm and the egg trail. You know what I mean? It really wasn't about DNA, 2323. It was who was doing what, when, and where, or where it popped up. And so this is a whole new trail thing we're going on. And it's kind of scary in some aspects because we're on overload, too. I mean, we are totally overloaded with information and choices.
Yes.
It's in its infancy, and it's in its
you're the same way, True, as far as your DNA as well. And we connect DNA, we haven't tracked it back yet, but we know it's on the European side. I'm hoping it's on my dad's side, but I think it's my mama's side. So, but
so I'm going to jump in really quick. We had a couple people join us since we did our last introduction. We've got April Branch, who is part of who I call the Genealogy Breakfast Club. She's one of the younger folks. April is here. She is from Memphis. She's a West Tennessean. And April is also my cousin genetically. She matches her dad matches my mother and my grandmother, and we're trying to figure out exactly where the relation is with that. And then we also have Linda Okazaki, who is the president of the California Genealogical Society in Oakland, California, and she is my resident expert on Japanese research. She can tell you anything you want to know about Japanese research. I learned a lot from her, including what a kosike was. I didn't forget when you told me what that was. And so I'm glad to have her here tonight. Yeah, I have friends in a lot of different places. You didn't know that, did you, Troy?
We got a lot of nationalities here at one time. That's all the little subgroups. You got your Asian, your European, your African, your Latin. We going
the
Latin good.
Yeah. Let me see. Do I have any of that in my DNA?
Well, actually,
I do.
I was going to say I do. I'm hot on the trail of a Dominican ancestor.
Oh, cool.
And I also have a Haitian one as well.
Okay. So Haitian will link to your African now.
Exactly. Well, and the other thing is with the Haitian piece, it's on my paternal grandfather's side, which is from New Orleans. So if you know anything about Haiti and New Orleans, I cannot wait to get that figured out. So is there anything April and Linda you may want to chime into in terms of the conversation that you've picked up on? We're just having a conversation about the barriers that people who may not do research on people of color and genealogy, why they don't feel empowered to do the research. Like, why there's sometimes this preoccupation with maybe needing approval or I don't know. Why do you think there shouldn't be a barrier? Anything you want to add, Linda?
I'm having a little trouble with my mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Very clear.
I think sometimes we just have to get out into the typically underserved populations. We need to get outside of the genealogy box and get into the communities and just make as genealogists, we should be more approachable regardless of what color we are.
That makes sense.
It does.
Sense. Very good sense.
Be right back.
Yeah. Now, Linda, you're in California, right?
Yes, I am.
And April, where are you at?
Oh, she had to step out a second.
Oh, okay. Nika, where is April from?
April is from Memphis.
Memphis. Okay.
Yes, but April is the engineer.
Okay, great. Yeah, there you go.
She's over by my side on the west side. I'm on the east.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, Nika, I think the conversation is interesting because we're all coming from different experiences, different environments, and things as well. But what we see with this technology, not just the DNA, but the technology, I think taint some of what we're doing too. I'm not saying negative taint. I'm just saying it puts a reflection because of what we have access to. And just like True and I, when we were talking to you earlier about the ancestry and people, when you have a public tree, that people can change something on your tree without telling you and not having information. Or we're getting inaccurate information on other people, you know, the little green leaf, you know. And my hope would be that people that are doing research is that they go check the resources that person used to be able to put that information up there. And I like looking at other people's trees to get leads to go look at something. But if I take something down, I've got to see where they got it and go look at it myself. And I think that's a lesson that we have to do, is not always take somebody's word for something, go try to back it up. And I think that's critical, especially in the people of color research. You got to go dig it up and validate it yourself.
We do. We have to do that from day one. We can't afford to. We can't afford to miss those sources and those citations and put it down as evidence wrong and then go back. We're already so far behind on all of this that we have to do this, and teach correctly. And you can't take anybody's word for it. You still have to prove your research. You still have to have what did you do? What conclusion did you come to get to that? Whatever it is, if it's a picture or anything on there. I just feel like I'm kind of behind. I feel like I'm catching up every day. So everything I'm doing it correctly, because first of all, I'm the first person in my family on both sides. My mom's European side and my dad's African American side. So I can't afford to make too many mistakes, but if I do, I'm sure I'll be forgiven, you know, from my unborn or whoever's going to take over what I'm doing. But for right now, I want to make sure that they have everything as accurate as possible, because my genealogy is critical. And if I'm the one starting it off, I have to try to get as much as I can correctly done. So it's a responsibility. You're responsible for that, what you're passing on. Just try to do your best.
Brings in the ultimate debate of the citations. You know,
of course.
The ultimate. That's like there's no black Confederates. You know, it's a discussion I don't get into, and but the citations is another one. But you know, my point of view, cite it. I don't care how you do it, cite it. Where did you get it from? Just cite it. You know?
Let that next person know where you got it from, whether it's the larger community or the person that's going to carry on your work one day. Because I know I don't want my family to have to start from scratch.
You already did that.
Yeah, I already
But I mean, this kind of goes back to the point as to whether or not, or the reasons why people may not take people of color genealogy seriously, is the fact that, you know, think about it. A lot of these, I would say, like, standards, right? When do they ever utilize an African American family as an example?
Yeah.
It's only the last few years.
You know, that's what I was gonna say. You know, the Holy Grail books. You know what I mean? Have you ever? I mean, think about it. If you haven't seen an example of that, that would possibly cause you to maybe not take it as seriously, or think that there was a valid reason for it. That's not saying that that's justified, but you know, if the only folks you've come into contact with are people who don't care about where the type of source, the condition of it, you know, look at the history behind that particular source. And that's all you have to go on, you know, I mean, you might make some generalizations, but that also goes back to the point of, you know, this is a larger issue, I think, kind of weaves into the whole discussion on race that we're having in the United States. You're not gonna have an experience with people of color unless you go out and spend time with people of color.
Right.
That's true.
Also to realize how segregated it is. You know?
Yeah, even in our field, even in genealogy, it can get like that at times. But I just try to do my part and go where we're not at.
Right.
I love our visitor over Ellen Ted.
Yeah.
Echo.
I was trying to
It's
figure
so
out who that
funny.
was.
Halloween time, right?
I know it
Going
was
on
like
the
it
back.
was perfect cue. I was like, is that a cat? Yeah, but
That was so.
I think it's a broader discussion. You know, I think by virtue of what's happening around us, we have to have these discussions. You know, we have to be candid. We have to be honest. I mean, you know, is it uncomfortable as it may be for someone who has, you know, predominantly European ancestry to discover that they have relatives that may not identify that way. It's just as painful for you to acknowledge that you have an ancestor who may have been taken advantage of
Oh
or
yeah.
brutalized. You know, it's not easy on one side or the other. You know,
Right.
it's just not. And so kind of have to come together in the middle. You know, with that. Any other comments on this? Anything anybody can think
There's
of you
also
want to discuss?
submerged identities or subsumed identities where you finally can get either through the DNA or through additional documentation, you start to put together a very different picture of what a certain identity was or what the aims of the United States were at a certain time by defining people in just very limited categories. And that happened with indigenous identity on the island as well. You know, so you had all these people who are now realizing, I'm not white. I'm actually
Right.
native. I'm actually, you know, Afro-Boricua. I'm actually a
Yeah.
mix of all of these things, and to honor all those ancestors, you know, not just to just limit it to certain lines of certain people like in the past.
You know,
Well, you know,
go ahead. I was going to say something else that's interesting too. Is and I'll share this link with you all. There's been a discussion recently about, you know, cultural appropriation. You know, who's allowed to wear African prints or who's allowed to do this.
right.
And someone from who was from Africa that lives in the United States wrote this interesting blog about how they felt like African Americans had no right to wear African fabrics and that it was cultural appropriation.
Wow, that's interesting.
What do you do with trade beads? I mean, like, I mean, things go all around. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not from one place to begin with.
Yeah.
So even some of these ideas about locality is something that, when you look closely at the history, is not necessarily there. You know, it's not necessarily one thing. You know.
Yeah, and the thing that got me, and you know, that I responded to on this was, by virtue of me being African American, I have, and you know, let's go back to the fourth or fifth grade grandparent level. That's 64 plus people who could
Right.
come from 64 different places in Africa.
Exactly.
So how can
Right.
you tell me? And then some of them aren't even African. So how
That's
can you tell
right.
me I can't wear kente cloth, a kilt, you know, a lapa? You know, how can you tell me I can't wear all those things at one time if that's what is inside me? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
but it's I think it's sort of territorialism, kind of coming over things, which, you know, people are just like that in just
Hmm.
about everything. Speaking of people of color, you know, we our last hangout was about the Freedmen's Bureau records and what was inside it, things you could find, complications, you know, discoveries that we had with that. One of the things I think we probably need to discuss tonight is the fact that it's the rate that the records are being indexed on Family Search is nowhere near as close as it was to, let's say, the 1940 census.
Oh no.
Why do you all feel as though that is the case? Do you have any theories?
Sure, but I'm definitely not stepping out first. Go on, Angela. I'm calling you out first. This is another discussion, you know, and unfortunately, I want to look at the black researchers on this. Where are you?
Well, it's a
But go
combination
ahead.
of things. It is a combination of things.
Yeah,
If all of the black researchers were indexing, the rate would be higher.
a little.
All of the black researchers, as we well know, and I'm just speaking figuratively when I'm saying that, are not even active online. They are not in social media, which is where most of the communication takes place. How many of them are going to watch a live hangout? How many were watching the live stream when it came from Los Angeles on Juneteenth? Let alone going to try and get motivated and launch an indexing group maybe in their local chapter or among a few friends or among their own social media group that they're active in. There's a big digital divide. There is a huge digital divide, and we're in the dark ages. That's number one. Number two, which maybe number two is really number one, everybody does not use the Freedmen's Bureau records or look at them because they don't think that they will find anyone of interest to them. Meaning, well, hopefully African Americans, because even so, the way it is being promoted as an African American record set.
Right.
Yet, in Western Arkansas, I can tell you, I can pull up page after page after page
Right.
of receiving rations, a majority of whom were not African American, who were not black. And who do you think who worked in the Bureau? If you were from Iowa and your ancestor was a Union soldier, wouldn't you want to know and see some letters that your ancestor wrote when he was writing reports? And if you had an ancestor in Massachusetts who was a school teacher and she went south for 6 months and taught in a freedmen's school, wouldn't you want to know that? But what is being actually portrayed, unfortunately, is that it's a black record set for black people. It's an American record set.
It's American.
Right.
It is a beautiful record set.
Yeah.
And also, let us not forget the official name, getting me on my soapbox, Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. The abandoned lands belong to the Southern whites, who had to take oaths of allegiance to the United States after having seceded from the country. They had to swear their loyalty. If you're from the South, wouldn't you like to see the oath of allegiance that your ancestor signed? This is an American record set. The Civil War was horrible. A lot of horrible things happened. Thousands of people died, tens of thousands. All of our ancestors were affected. The trajectory of the lives of many people changed, regardless of color, regardless of social class. Wouldn't you want to know those stories also?
But do
part
you,
of our narrative.
but do you think, and this is something I considered this week, people are scared of the batch they're going to get?
I don't think people know what they're going to get.
Yeah, I agree, Angela.
Presented to them as being helpful to their personal research. We all know the temptation when you go and pick up a book on your county. First thing you're going to do is flip the index and see if your family surname is in there. We're not telling the same people who indexed the 1940 census, we're not telling them that their family name is possibly there. They're not being told that. So if they're not being told that, well, the same way, no one is telling me that a bunch of folks from Southwest Arkansas went to Poland for 3 years. So, true, I am not going to go and index Polish records. And I don't have a thing against Polish people. But the fact is that if people think that, oh, this is for African Americans, well, I'm looking for my Rabinskis who migrated in 1845. They don't necessarily know that maybe someone who was in his 20s was in a regiment from Wisconsin and served in one of the field offices of the Bureau. It's not being sold to them that it's worth looking into and may benefit their personal research. I don't think people are afraid. Now, if you're going to read some of those letters and attacks and outrages, yeah, they're going to find some horrible stuff. But you're going to find some amazing things in there as well. But it's not being sold. And I think a lot of people don't know that they can point that out to people.
Well, we
Thank you,
we just laid it out.
I'm done.
No, I know, we've had these discussions.
Yes.
And I think, and again, what with that first question you threw out, the level, and Ellen said the class, it's right on point. It's really not any different from that discussion to the question you just asked. You know, it's what's viewed, and it comes back to those same things. It's just dressed differently.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you know, from goes right back to that first question.
Hmm.
Same thing.
Anything you'd like to add, Linda, Ellen, April?
I want to say I really appreciate all of Angela's points because it's not a record set I'm familiar with because, face it, I'm like in Puerto Rican records. But I have a cousin, Teresa Vega, who you might have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yay!
Yeah.
I admitted her
She
sister Elisa to
today
custody.
was showing me Friedman records for one family member, and I was really amazed. And then helping, just trying to see if I could find something else with her and for her. And it was just really an amazing thing to see, to work with. So I wasn't aware of this larger history, and it's really it's actually shameful that they don't pitch it as an American record set.
I think they don't know, to be honest.
Well,
I don't
that's
think they know.
yeah,
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 I think so.
We'll have to get Teresa up in here too.
yeah.
She's my go-to person as well. She's a fourth DNA cousin to my grandbaby. So that's our connection. And
Oh wow.
she's a genealogy blogger as well. So
Hmm.
I know her work pretty well on her Borica roots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Radiant Branches, Body Roots blog.
Mhm.
I admitted her sister Elisa to college at Tufts University 1,000 years
Oh,
ago in the 1980s. So
Yeah. Yeah, we have a good community online. I know I try to
Yeah.
get out and just in the community, but this is where my family is at online when I need to vent or run things by everybody that I know of in our community is, whether it's the Japanese, like she just said, or Latin or African American, that's where I go to get fed to keep going. So that is the one good thing about the technology.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nika, I have to apologize because I was late. I see several new faces that I don't know.
Oh, well, I'll go back through and introduce everybody. We have a few minutes left here. So besides yourself, we have April Branch, who is the past president of the Memphis Augs chapter. She's
Oh,
part,
April. Okay.
yeah, I'm sure you remember her from Augs
I want to
Conference.
talk to her about President
Nashville.
Island.
Nashville.
But it was a conference in Nashville.
You were in that.
County.
Yes.
Yes, and Miss Angela has been saying that she needs to get with you to talk about President's Island. So that's a sidebar conversation. So she's
Sidebar.
here, and then next is Ellen Fernandez Sacco. She's there in California. She's
Yeah, my
past
meeting.
president of the California Genealogical Society, and then
Oh,
there's Linda Okazaki, who is the current president of the California Genealogical
Love her
Society.
name.
welcome.
And then, of course, you know the last three people because, we just bother you all the time. Okay, so one last question before we wrap up. Someone posed this, and I think this is a good discussion to have. What's the genealogy consensus on saying slave versus enslaved? Whose verbiage is correct? Who decides how we are supposed to call our ancestors?
Well,
Wow.
doesn't enslave and slave mean two different things? First,
They
that's
do.
how I look at it.
I
So
think.
you use the correct one for the dialogue, and
Well, I think the emergence of the word enslaved is an effort to truly reflect the status that was imposed upon those individuals who
yeah,
were held in bondage.
yeah,
And they did not volunteer. A person may choose to be a doctor, a person may choose to be a plumber, a person may choose to be an opera singer, assuming they have the talent, but one does not choose to be a slave.
Right.
One is enslaved, which accurately reflects the fact that here was a status, something happened to them,
Hmm.
and which is also, in addition to that, using the word enslaver or slaveholder as opposed to owner. Owner suggests something very legitimate. If I purchase this object, I am the owner. It was a legitimate purchase. Purchase of a human being is a heinous, illicit, illegitimate act that should not be accepted as normal, because it was definitely not normal to the human spirit. That is at least the way I interpret the emergence of the word. If you say your great grandfather was a slave, I'm not going to correct you and argue with you. I know what you're saying.
Correct.
But if I tell you about my great grandparents, I will tell you that they were enslaved.
I'm just going to jump in here. This is not part of my family history, but I know language changes over time, and certain populations change their definitions. So I can speak to the Japanese American population. The term used to be interned, and now the term that's acceptable is incarcerated. So I expect that the language will change in different cultural groups throughout the United States over time.
I think it's different for people to embrace what happened in their history.
Right.
And to control their version of how they tell their history.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to throw this out here. How does the millennials refer to those words?
Nika, you're the millennial. And
I would technically, I'm older than that, but whatever.
But and I'm raising that for a reason, because a lot of us that are involved in societies, a lot of us that are doing this, number one, as the professional genealogist, number two, as the family historian, how do we reach them? Because they're not going to see it the way I do at 63 or somebody else at 43.
They're being taught the same.
Huh?
You're being taught the same thing. When I talk to some young people, and they say, "Oh yeah."
But they don't bring it out that way.
I hear them used because they are being taught that way. I don't know what others had with people in your family.
Well, you kind of wonder what's going to happen, like with Texas, right? A former slave state, and now issuing they're trying to eliminate the language or to to sugarcoat it. For the books that they're issuing now for school children. So we're going to have another generation of people who are going to either not know or are going to really need to learn this from somebody else.
Or be culturalized elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you all are friends with me on Facebook. Maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I posted someone on Flickr had kept a history textbook from Alabama, and they took photos of what was said about slavery.
Right.
And these books were used well into the 70s, and you read it going, who thought this was a good idea?
Right.
Who wrote this book?
But it was the way.
But that was the way. And so I would say for young people, they've been culturalized to say slave. And honestly, I mean, if you really want to, dive down deep with younger folks, they don't even want to have any association with slavery at all. When you talk to, or when I've had conversations with young people, and I talk to young people all the time, a lot of times, even kids younger than high school age, when you ask them about their ancestry, and I hate to say this, especially kids of color, the first thing they talk about are their non-minority ancestors that they allegedly have. They don't talk about, oh, well, my mother is this or my dad is this, especially if they're in a group and they see other kids start to do that, they often will respond similarly. But then the other thing I will say is that if there's a child who has been taught their history and knows who their people are, even if they were slaves or not, and they talk about it with pride, the other children will then kind of rise up to that standard and talk about their ancestry in the same way. So I feel it really depends on what the parents and the families are instilling in their children. One of the things that we did at our reunion Everybody got a name tag, and I've heard so many people tell me that they thought this was an ingenious thing to do, but everyone had their generation on their name tag. So
That's
you could
Mm.
walk around and see who's in generation 5. And even little kids were like, wow, you could be my grandma, but you're in the same generation as me. I actually heard them say that.
Mhm.
That's a
But it
great
helped
idea.
them get a context for the fact
Where
that
they
something
fit
happened
in.
before them and where they fit into the family. And
Yeah.
so I would just admonish anyone who even has a small interest in genealogy who's involving younger people and their family in it to be very frank and honest with them about what happened.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
and be age appropriate, of course, but at the same time, we have to give our children pride in who they are as individuals. And that means all of the thousands or hundreds of people that they descend from, whether they were enslaved or whether they were free.
Hmm.
Um, and, I also would caution too people who come from people of color. Something that I've encountered myself when I talk to folks who have free people of color in their families. Well, we were never slaves. Almost
Mm.
like I should feel bad because my family were.
Right.
So it's a scale we kind of have to balance. One thing that I want to let everybody know who's watching this either live or later, on the event page, I included the definitions of what incarcerate, intern,
Mhm.
slave, and enslaved are,
Right.
just so you can get a context.
Mhm.
And just to review, enslaved, this is just based off of just a simple Google search, means to make someone a slave, cause someone to lose their freedom of choice or action, versus a slave who is a person who is the legal property of another and is forced to obey them. So you
Right.
kind of see how the qualities are different. In terms of intern,
Mhm.
um, to confine someone as a prisoner, especially for political or military reasons, and incarcerate is to imprison or confine.
Hmm.
So those are the differences between the different terms. But we're at a little after 9. I thank all of you all for joining. Is there anything you'd like to say before we sign off this evening?
I had a good time. I hope these ladies come back in again and broaden our community. That was just awesome to me that there are other, colors of our community and they're here. So I appreciate that.
that's very. I agree with that.
I
Yeah.
True.
do too.
I
Yeah.
do. I do as
I
well.
enjoyed
Great
that.
I'm
conversation.
thrilled to
Thank you.
see that they came to join us, and hope we'll have a chance to meet you all in California maybe in June. So
Yeah. Oh, well, Linda was at Jamboree, so I don't know if we didn't get a chance to cross paths, but Ellen, I don't know if Ellen's gone, but regardless, I'll make sure that if we're there next year to make sure we do introductions and
Oh,
whatnot. So
so
sorry.
where Ellen? Where are you from?
New York City.
New York. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'm in
I'm in
Maryland.
Oakland.
Okay.
okay, so just to let everyone know, that our next hangout is scheduled for October 13th, same time, same days on a Tuesday. We'll be talking about the African American Online Genealogy Toolbox. Following that, our
Yeah.
pre-Halloween extravaganza is going to be Tales from the Genome. how how fitting. And then that's on October 27th, followed by that November 10th and 17th, we're going to be doing our Brick Wall Buster session. So that means send us your hardest conundrums, things that you've spent years trying to figure out, for us to see if our esteemed panel of folks can help you get further in your research. So thank you all for joining us.
One thing.
And
Angela
oh,
got something.
she's got
Yes.
something. Okay.
Greetings from Vicki Davis Mitchell, who is watching on YouTube, and she, I guess, can't get the room's
Vicky.
time
Hi,
explained on
cousin
my phone
Vicky.
from
Hey, Vicky.
Arizona. And anyway, so we're waving to her. So,
Another DNA cousin.
I
oh,
Yes,
know.
thanks for joining us.
I think we need to start making a tree of all the quote unquote noted people in genealogy and how we're all related. Because I guarantee you, like, all of us are connected to Melvin Collier, me,
I'm
True
not,
Lewis.
not yet.
except he's my step cousin. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
All these years, me and Skip finally connected. All these years, so that was a good, sweet moment too
that's
last
where
week.
you
But
connect with the Anthony
oh, Skip
too.
Mason.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. Well,
Wow.
I love hearing you guys with your connections. I never have connections, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah. But we all have to keep at it. But we need
Yeah.
these little hangout on airs and talks so that people can start getting comfortable with their genealogy and start going
Yeah.
after it. Because once they see us talking and we're applying and doing, it'll start making them work harder at their own. Because I think this is really needed, especially with this technology age. People are hungry for all this information that you're doing, Nika. So, yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
to all of you, have a good
Thanks for
night.
having us.
And I will be headed to the boot tomorrow to eat myself to death.
Oh my God.
I can't
I'll be
Headed to
wait.
what?
jealous.
To
I'll
the
be going
boot?
to the boot, also known as
Yeah.
New Orleans. I'm heading back home.
Oh, New
Oh,
Orleans boot.
wow.
I was thinking Italy, Florida.
Oh no, baby,
Gulf of
no,
Mexico,
no, no,
yes.
no,
I
Rome,
like
no,
when I
not
Yeah,
get to
yet,
New
Biloxi,
not
Orleans.
yet. As
that
much
was
as I
my
wish,
closest.
I
The
wish.
weekend was New Orleans, but Biloxi was where I lived for a couple of years.
Oh yeah, I wish I was going to Italy. My niece is actually there now. I'm jealous. So
well, let's
Wow.
just
I'm
have
trying to.
not take it, or let's have a meetup in Rome. I'd love it.
Well, I'm
absolutely.
actually trying to figure out how I can go see my son. I figured he's been living in Japan for 3 years. I need to go see him instead of
You
him.
better hurry up.
I know, I know, I know. I need to go. I just, I got to cross that way. I got to cross that ocean.
Oh, you
You
can do
know,
it.
I'm
Safe
trying.
travels to you too, Nika.
All right, you all. Well,
Thanks, Nika.
until next time. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye.
Kiss my
Bye-bye.
baby now.
Will do.
No.